Hello and welcome to another Eternal Bookstore Book Nook customization. Today we're going to make our own miniature butterfly collection and magnifying glass. I got my butterflies from pixabay.com. You can go there and download the butterflies, any butterflies that you like, or draw your own. And if you don't have image editing software to change the size of these butterflies to make them small enough for our scale, you can use Google Drive to do so. And you just want to go to New Google Docs and then to Insert, and you're going to insert an image, upload from computer, and you're going to upload the image that you downloaded. And now you can click on the image and drag the corners to make it smaller. You can see that it's about 1 inch wide for the whole image. Another way is you can use the snipping tool, which is native to Windows machines. Here it is. Click on New, get that out of the way, and then I can just isolate one of the butterflies and save that to my computer and then upload it similarly to Google Docs to change the size. This is great for people who don't have image editing software and you don't even care about those background colors because you're gonna just cut that off anyway. My butterflies are approximately 1/2 centimeter wide. Now they are slightly curved up like that, so they might be a little tiny bit wider than that, but here you can see what I printed out. I used a different collage image sheet. And I'm just going to use some very fine scissors to cut these out. And I'm not going to worry about the little body part or the antenna. And I have it printed out on paper that's a little bit stiff so that when I fold these butterflies a little bit, they'll hold their shape. Cut as close to the edge as you can. If you're worried about your prints fading, you can use UV varnish on them. I would do this before you cut them out. To make the frames, I cut a craft stick. I cut a craft stick that is 2.5 centimeters in width. And I made a little plaque that's 2.5 centimeters wide by 2 centimeters tall. You can make yours any size you like, and you may want to decide what size you're going to make your butterfly frame by looking at some of the pre-existing rectangles or squares in your scrap from your kit. And you may find something there that you can cut out easily as a frame and you won't have to build the frame yourself. Here I'm using my craft knife and my ruler to lightly and carefully score multiple times over the line that I cut until I cut out my rectangle that's going to be the base. You can also use a razor saw if you have one. I have a razor saw here with a miter box, and normally the miter box would be sitting on the table, but I needed to raise it up so I could show you what it looks like. So just score carefully over and over, and don't worry if you mess up the front because you could just flip it over and do your butterflies on the back. So once you get this cut out, you're going to give it a light sanding on the edges, and I'm just using my emery board that I use to sand my little miniatures. This is one that I got at the dollar store. Like I said before, you might want to look at your kit scrap first, even if you could even use that for the back of this, and then look for a frame that fits your piece. Even better, you could use one that exists like this and you could just cut around and you'd have this decorative edge. But I'm just going to use one of the long skinny pieces of scrap to make the frame, and I'm going to put it on top of the piece of wood that I just cut, which really only gives me about enough room for 3 butterflies. If you want 6 butterflies like I had before, then you might want to use a bigger piece of wood. You could even think about using that walkway scrap that we had if you're converting your book nook into a room box like mine. So now I'm just going to roughly measure the side pieces and glue them into place. Just going to cut these off, give them a very careful sand. You have to be a little bit careful with the wood from the kit because some of the thinner parts are quite fragile, and so you'll want to sand very, very gently. So I'm just cutting those off, and I'll give them a little light sand and glue them directly to the wood. I'm not going to change the color of the backdrop of this frame. I'm only going to change the color of the outside frame itself. So those two are going to get glued directly to the surface with some tacky glue, but you could use any glue you have. If you have any excess glue, you can just clean it up with a craft stick, or I'm sorry, with a cocktail stick or some little scrap wood. It's going to dry clear and no one's really going to see it anyway, but I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. And I want to make sure that the outside of that piece of wood that I just glued to the back is level with the outside of the backing. In other words, I want the frame to sit exactly on top of the backing. I highly recommend letting these two side parts dry before you try to glue on the top and the bottom. I, however, did not wait because I wanted to get this filming done, so I go ahead and glue the top and bottom pieces, and they're going to fit in between the two side pieces there. So I'm just going to get my tweezers and glue these into place. Once the frame is dry, I'm going to use my Rust-Oleum stain marker in mahogany to darken up the color of the outside edge of the frame and the bits that I glued to the backing. I want to make sure that the glue is dry before I do this so that I don't transfer glue onto my marker. And what that does is it really makes the frame look complete. Now I've got my little butterflies cut out here, and what I need to do is put some black marker that doesn't bleed around the outside. So I have the Posca paint pen, which is filled with acrylic paint, and I also colored the back of the butterfly with a blue marker for the blue one and an orange marker for the orange one. And I do this because I don't want any white paper to be visible. If we want these to look like actual butterflies, then we need there to be no white edging, and you want to use a marker that doesn't bleed because obviously you don't want your butterfly color to be filled up with black ink. Gently bend the butterflies a little bit in half and then put out some tacky glue, and using your tweezers you're going to pick up your little butterflies, and if you can't pick them up with your tweezers, you can pick them up with the end of your finger and then just bend them a little bit, dip them in the glue, and place them into the frame. I find it easier if I place the center butterfly first. I'm just eyeballing center, and I'm only gluing the fold. I'm leaving the butterfly wings to stick up and be dimensional outside of the frame itself. Once I get that center butterfly in there, then I can eyeball the placement of glue drops and put the glue drops where I want the butterfly to be. I noticed that this one had a bunch of white space on the back of it, so I'm coloring that in with a black marker. And now it's stuck to my tweezers. Butterflies look more interesting if you place different colored butterflies together. You may find it easier to put a dot of glue down where you want to put the butterfly and then placing the butterfly on that dot of glue rather than dipping your butterfly into the glue beforehand, which is what I think was making it stick to my tweezers. And there we have it, a beautiful butterfly kit for our little naturalist who lives inside of the Eternal Bookstore. Let's hang it on the wall. I'm going to use some museum wax to hang it on the wall. You can see where I took the original butterfly collection that I had done previously off of the wall so that I could show you how to stick this on. So that's just some glue on my wallpaper, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to put the butterfly collection on the wall, and then up next we're going to make a little magnifying glass, and I have that sitting on this little journal that I made. To make the magnifying glass, I'm going to use some jump rings that I got at Michael's. These are gunmetal jump rings, and it's an assortment. They come in all different sizes, so depending on the scale of your dollhouse or book nook, that's going to inform what size jump ring you want to use. This one is too big, so I'm going to use one of the smaller jump rings, but I don't know the exact size. I think it's probably around 5 millimeters. I had these little gold metal tube beads, and I thought I might use one of those for the handle for my magnifying glass. But when I took it out and laid it down, it seemed a little bit too long. So I end up using a piece of wood from the kit, like I've been doing all along, a little extra piece. To make the glass in our magnifying glass, I'm going to use some trash plastic. So any kind of plastic packaging that you have. Before I use some clear drying tacky glue to glue this jump ring to the plastic, I'm just cutting a piece of leftover wood from the kit in half in order to make it a better width for my handle. And then I'm just going to color that with my Rust-Oleum stain marker. And now that I've got that cut, it's going to sit just ever so slightly over the edge of that plastic so that I can glue everything together, and the plastic itself will be a bit of stability for that handle. So I just put some clear drying tacky glue onto the plastic in a smooth layer, and then I'm going to press the jump ring down into it, and then I'm going to put the handle on with just a tiny little bit of super glue. And what that's going to do is hold that handle in place while the tacky glue dries. I've positioned the opening of the jump ring at the bottom so that it kind of gets lost in the handle. All right, I let that dry overnight, and I also made a little tiny pair of spectacles, but that ended up falling apart when I was cutting them out. So all you're going to do to get your magnifying glass out of here is just cut it out with some sharp scissors. I leave a little bit of the plastic stuck to the handle for stability, and now I can also use that to glue my magnifying glass into the scene. Because it's so small, if I don't glue it, I'm going to lose it anytime I move my room box or my book nook. Now that I'm finished filming this tutorial, I'm going to glue my magnifying glass to this little butterfly journal that I made. All I did was search for vintage butterfly naturalist books on Pinterest and found a copyright-free image that I could download, resize, and cut out. And I just made it look like it was a book, but the papers underneath that are just blank. If you make anything for my tutorials, I would love it if you would tag me on Instagram so I can see what you make. Coming up, we're going to build wall I in the book nook, and I will show you the customizations I did there. And then after that, I will share with you how I made this sliding library ladder. And then rounding out this series, I will share with you how I made my book nook convertible back and forth from a book nook into a room box. You might be wondering why I decided to do this. I decided to do this because I wanted the option to make more miniatures for this kit. And if I had glued it all together permanently as a book nook, I wouldn't really be able to fit anything else in there. If you've been interested in customizing this book nook, chances are you're interested in learning how to make other kinds of miniatures. And So having the room box option gives you more room to play around with making furniture or other items in miniature that you might want to showcase in your space. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll subscribe and like, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.